Hi friends! Today we are going to build bioactive enclosures for an arboreal reptile or amphibian. These 12 by 12 by 18 enclosures are perfect for young crested gecko, young gargoyle gecko, smaller day geckos like peacock day geckos or line day geckos. Would also be great for smaller tree frogs. And the foliage that we picked is going to reflect that. So it's going to reflect having a white light on it, which for some animals might be a UV light or it might just be a grow light for the plants. The plants that we picked do require additional lighting than just room lighting. So we are going to start with our drainage layer on these enclosures. So we each have a bag of hydroponic balls here. And these are just clay pellets, and these will act as a drainage layer, so we will go ahead and fill the bottom of our enclosure with these guys. Now that we've added our drainage layer, we're going to add a screen to keep our dirt from just falling in. So just place that in your enclosure along the top of your hydro balls, your clay pellets. And this is just to prevent all the dirt that you're going to put in here from falling down. So our next layer is actually going to be a layer of sphagnum moss.
Okay, but first, this is a little bit big. Do I want to leave it running up the back of the terrarium, or do I want to try to tuck it into the sides of the terrarium?
You want to run it up, and you can bring it so it's evenly up on all the sides.
Okay.
And this will keep stuff from falling down into the crevices along the sides.
Oh, I see.
And if it's way too long, we can trim it. But we're going to be adding lots of dirt and other things in there, which will...
Perfect. I think it's actually perfect.
Awesome. So next, we're going to add our layer of sphagnum moss. And it is pre-soaked, so I dumped some water in here. And you're just going to put enough to cover the screen, and to make sure that you're getting it in those far little corners. And this is going to be our next layer to keep our dirt from falling down into our drainage layer. It's this layer of sphagnum moss. And sphagnum moss is a great growing medium for a lot of different types of plants. A lot of plants will live just in this sphagnum. And we're going to see that later on when we attach our epiphytes to the top of our enclosure. We're going to make sure that we are getting sphagnum all along the very edges of the enclosure. How's yours looking, Sunny?
Pretty good, pretty good. I've got it all around the edges. It's maybe a little more sparse in the middle, so I think I'm going to add some more in the middle. Does that sound about right?
Yep. You want a thin layer, just enough to keep the dirt from falling in.
Key. Cool.
All right. Now we're ready for our sticks. So our branches, our climbing structures. And we might have to break them a little bit to make them fit. Or pick shorter ones.
Yeah, I picked them based on the empty terrarium. I forgot.
I did the exact same thing, so mine are a little too long. Tuck it in. But with our wood, we want our wood to be kind of snug in there. We want it to be secure. You don't want your gecko to jump and it fall. So you want to make sure that as you're sticking it in here, you're getting it nice and snug. And so I like to first put my big sticks in to kind of create the shape I want to make. And then I'll pop my big plant in here in its pot just to kind of see if that's what I like. And I think I do like it there, so I'm going to add one more small stick here. Let's pull this out. And you really want to give your animal as much climbing space as possible, so lots of stuff is good. Also keep in mind that your plants are going to grow, so you might need to trim. They might be plants that get really big, and you'll have to eventually transplant them or give them massive haircuts. Alright, Sunny, that's looking pretty good.
Yay!
So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add our big plant in, and we are going to pull it out of its pot. You can also leave it in its pot if you feel comfortable with that. You can just stick it in there and put some sphagnum moss or some Spanish moss just over the front of your pot. If you want to leave it in there, something like this, right? So it's hidden. But you know, if your plant dies or you need to pull it out to take care of it, it's easy to do. But we're going to just fully get in here. So we're just going to go ahead and unpot our plants here. Make a bit of a mess, and we've got some crazy roots going on here.
Same here.
So we can actually pull this plant apart, and we can see that there is lots of little tiny plants going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and just start to pop them apart, and that way we can really, you know, design our plantscape a little bit better. We can split them up. They don't all have to be next to each other. So each one of these little parts is its own plant. And then you can see the big mama plant here. So Sunny's got a few out of that as well. So we've added in our big plants. We both chose aglaonemias for this. And then I added in a little fern here at the bottom to kind of add a different layer to my terrarium. And then Sunny, what little plants did you add in there?
So I have my pilea that's hiding back here. And then we've got the creeping fig that I was going to put at the back of the cage, but the aglaonema is kind of hiding the back of the cage, so I decided to put it in front of this branch, so it'll grow up the branch instead.
Perfect. So now that we've decided on our plant placement in our terrariums, we're going to go ahead and add our soil, which is our next layer. So we have a bag of soil hidden back there. Sunny, you've got one too. And we're going to go ahead and add this in. And this is a mix of a few different things that we like to make here, which works really well for tropical terrariums. You can really use any sort of tropical terrarium mix for your dirt part. And we're going to make sure we are fully bearing the roots of our plants. We want our plants to have a good layer of soil over the roots. And you can, you know, be creative. Your dirt doesn't have to all be flat. You can make little mountains and things like that as well. I'm just going to go ahead and dump a bunch into the back here. Make sure that our roots are all covered up here. Alright, now that I've got a solid layer of soil along the bottom, and it's totally covering the roots, and the plants are now planted in here, we're going to start looking at the plants that don't live with their roots in the soil. We're going to look at epiphytes, like these little orchids, this bulbophyllum. And this has little fresh blooms that are starting to come out. And all orchids have really different types of flowers depending on the group of orchids. And there's a lot of variation, which is pretty cool. And so same with, you know, like we split up our aglaonemias, and I've got a couple extras here because they didn't really fit well in the tank. We're going to do the same thing with our epiphytes. So what I'm going to do here is take this bulbophyllum, and I am going to trim off some of the pups. So these are pups from our mother plant. And they already have their roots going. And you see the roots aren't in the ground. The roots are floating in the air. So they're getting their moisture from being sprayed down. So this is going to be a high humidity tank that's sprayed probably twice a day. And that's when these orchids are going to be drinking. So I'm going to go ahead and trim it. In between the bulbs, there is this little thing holding them together. And that's what I'm going to clip right there. So here we go. We got a little tiny orchid. I'm going to clip a couple of these here. And as they grow, they will continue to puff off and make more. So you can actually see there's a new one coming off right here and right here. It's already shooting off some new ones. So let's see. Sunny, what do you have for epiphytes over there?
I picked a bulbophyllum dennisii, and this also has a large amount of little pups in a small space. So I feel like maybe I want to clip off like a clump of them. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. I'm going to let you guide me in this because I don't know.
I would pull the whole thing out of the pot to start with so you can get a better look at what's going on, because those are very small little bulbs you've got there.
They are very small little bulbs.
Doesn't want to come out.
It is very happily homed in this pot here. There we go.
And
so a lot of sphagnum moss there.
If she wanted to, she could plant that whole thing in her terrarium by attaching it to the wood. Mm-hmm. That whole big ball. I would probably just add a little more sphagnum, but we're going to chop them up a little bit to kind of be able to put the orchids in different parts of the tank so they won't all be bunched together. Okay, now that we have some of our epiphytes ready, we're going to go ahead and attach them. So the way we're going to attach them is we're going to use a little bit of sphagnum moss, and we're going to kind of create a little spot around them. I don't want to break the roots, but I do want to be able to hold moisture around the roots so that this plant can continue to grow. And so once I have a little ball of sphagnum, I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to find somewhere in the terrarium where I want it to be, and I'm going to go ahead and attach it. So I think it would look really cute right here. And I have a piece of wire, so I'm going to go ahead and use that wire to wrap around the plant. And the other type of epiphyte that we have been looking at are air plants. And Spanish moss is actually also an air plant. So you can take a little Spanish moss. We actually have two types of Spanish moss available. We have this thinner Spanish moss, and we have thicker Spanish moss. So I'm going to take a little bit of this thinner Spanish moss. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of drape it over over the sticks here, over these branches. And this is alive, you know, this is an air plant, so we're going to make sure that this also gets misted when we spray the cage down, and that'll help it continue to grow. How's the attachment going?
Pretty good, just making sure the ends are tucked
away
in and safe for animals.
Awesome. The last thing that we're going to add to our terrarium is leaf litter, and we're just going to put enough to kind of cover the bottom. We're going to go ahead and add the beneficial insects. So that would be things like springtails and isopods, and those are going to be our decomposers. They're going to be helping keep the tank clean. So those are the basics on how to set up your own bioactive enclosure, and kits will be available, so we can ship you everything you need to set up your own bioactive enclosure. We also have these fully set up enclosures available for local pickup. If you'd like to skip the hassle of building your own, we've got them here for you. These are for pickup only.